Now, here the narrator in a narrative text can switch between points of views of different characters. And the language that he is using could be very abstract or very concrete. And he may not follow a definite chronology of events. That is one aspect. The other is
Sir, you went on.
yeah, uh, every passage is actually a story.
Sorry to interrupt. There's still echo coming on your side.
Could you tell me why this is coming? I mean, what can I do here? Because I am also feeling a little, this echo is disturbing. Okay, just hold on.
Sir, actually, on the laptop, you can decrease the entire sound which is coming. Speaker, you could.
Should I switch off the laptop or do it
No,
from
no.
the...
On the laptop, you can off the audio. I mean, the speaker you can off.
Yeah, thank you very much. So, as I said, every passage is a story. There is a setting. These are elements of a story. Okay. A story has a setting. That means it gives you a kind of background. The first paragraph will definitely do this. Then there are, the writer will introduce some characters. It could be the author himself. He will start speaking in first person, or it could be that he is speaking through many other characters who are playing some role in that particular narrative. And obviously, in between, you'll have some conflict. That passage is going to indicate a certain conflict. So a story will have setting, which is the background information about what all it contains. So there will be a location, name of a place, or time, and or all these three factors would be there. That means location, geographical location, in terms of latitude, longitude, a particular period of time. So that will give you an idea about the setting, right? The next is the character, as I've already described that. The next part is that by the time you come down to the third paragraph, second, third, if it has got six, somewhere around the second or third paragraph, you'll get the conflict. Like, what is the conflict? What is the point of dispute here? The next element of a story that you are reading in the form of a passage is a plot. A plot in basic term means a series or a sequence of events that is unfolding, and finally the resolution. How you are going to resolve this, or how the author is planning to solve that particular problem. Now, in contrast to this is the narrative text. In contrast to this, there is an expository text. Now, expository texts are basically texts like what you all have read in your computer science or in your engineering. They are very informative, explanatory, and there is no scope for fiction there. And they are also very simple and concise. So the basic writing style will have something like a logical cause-effect structure of the argument. Although there are many different types of expository texts, but mainly these are descriptive, comparison and contrast, or cause and effect, or sequence oriented. So if you can recognize the text structure, you will definitely be at an advantage because you know what to look for. Because there is already a mental representation. So you can logically relate things in the text. Now this is called deconstruction of a text. The next thing that you should do while you are practicing to improve your reading comprehension is you should be writing summaries. Almost say, let's say about 1/3 of the size of the passage that you're getting. If it is using 900 words, nothing more than 300 should be like your summary. If it is using only 300, you use only 100 words. So that will also phenomenally improve your comprehension. And of course, you can do this exercise with newspaper articles. So if I were to tell you how to read, which we were tackling there, some more things that I would like to add, and this will only come with diligent practice. That is grouping important ideas that you have gathered from the passage into meaningful units, which will help you to clear the chaos. And how you can do is, you can draw a circle on a piece of paper, assign a topic to the passage, and then start writing out some related words in the extended part of the circle, which helps you to focus attention on the topic. The second thing was, as I said, look for linguistic clues, word association, word analysis, or even the text organization. Of course, you'll also have some non-linguistic clues, especially if it is in, if you're referring to the context of the text, you'll get an idea. There will be some description of a situation or some kind of cultural knowledge is being transmitted. Also, while preparing for RC, try to learn the meaning of prefixes. For example, the prefix co, which means together, or the prefix inter, which means between, or the prefix un, which means not. Now you need to distinguish the literal meaning from implied meaning. And this is a top-down process. So in the text where the discourse is being given, what you can do is you can try to figure out the relationship. How can you figure this out? By knowing when and why certain words or phrases are used. Like, for example, what kind of phrases we use on the other hand when we want to give an alternative viewpoint, or when we want to force an argument or force a point, and we want to give additional evidence, then there is a signal word that we use, moreover. So these are some things that you need to know. And of course, intensive reading to develop deeper meaning reading skills is very important. Normally, I ask my students that take a passage, read it at least twice, just the way I have just described now. The second exercise that you can do, you can draw a rectangle after you have drawn the circle exercise. You can draw a rectangle, and at each of the vertex point, you can put like what I agree, what I disagree, or and the third vertex could be epiphany or the aha moment, your insight moment, and the fourth vertex could be others, any additional information. So when you place this rectangle over the circle, superimpose it, you have basically made a passage organizer. So as I said, every topic sentence, the first sentence of a passage is essentially a hook. A hook is an attention grabber. First paragraph, first sentence, it tries to attract your attention. Now, depending on the felicity of the author, his command over the language, this particular hook could be weak, moderate, or strong. In this very first sentence of the paragraph, you get to know the clear subject, and you get to know what is the opinion of the author. Now here, while reading the first paragraph, ask yourself, what is this passage going to prove? Add your observations. Agree, disagree, aha. And I hope you are simultaneously filling this detail while practicing. See, you need to do this practice at least for a few sets. The passage organizer, wherein you draw the circle and you have a rectangle, and inside you have placed a inside the circle you have placed the rectangle. You have written the topic, you have written various points about the topic, and then in the circle you are writing agree, disagree, and the aha moment, the insight, at what point you got this, what was the beautiful lesson that this passage was trying to give you. So this is going to, and you know, there is always bound to be a clincher sentence. A clincher is basically which will leave a wow impression on your mind and will reconnect with the hook, the first sentence of the passage. Now, sometimes what can happen is the conclusion might be restated. Essentially, it will readdress the main idea and try to creatively restate that conclusion. So that is, and then if you look at the anatomy, as I said, every passage will have a story, setting, theme, plot. In the next few classes, I'll try to explain these items, but I've just given you a superficial overview. Now, any plot, as I said, is a sequence of events or episodes. And each of these episodes will have some kind of a goal and an outcome. So there will be some special event in the passage. And along with the event, there will be some episode which is happening together. And finally, as a result of these two, there is an outcome. There is an event and a state of affair. Of course, every passage will also have various goals, main goals or sub goals. And every passage will introduce you to a location, a time, and some characters. That is called the state. Okay. So we use this framework. I'll try to illustrate it while doing this exercise. So, every passage has a theme. It's like a general focus. And that general focus is being highlighted by the sequence of events or the plot. And because there is a goal, some main character in the passage is trying to achieve a goal. And there will be a series of events leading up to that outcome. And there is a justification for that outcome. And since the passage is only limited in your exam hall, in a long story of say 300 pages, the plot can continue and there could be several episodes. Which means when I say several episodes, I mean a cluster of actions. But in your case, it will be not more than 2 or 3. And as I said, all the events are trying to achieve a goal. So when a football team plays a match against its opponent, the plot is for each of the team to strike a goal. Now they may strategize, and that becomes the sub goal. And depending on the outcome of that particular strategy, one particular team scores, the other gets defeated. So when I say that there is a sub goal also, there is a particular method of achieving that particular goal. So I think that should be clear. So now how do you identify themes? One is repetition. If you find that some data, some information, or some word, you're coming across that very frequently. Which will indicate that the same network of ideas is being represented. Now that could be in terms of, say, an author might be writing about greed or power. So you may have such discussions, and that theme of greed or power or corruption will be repeated again and again. And each time it is being repeated, it will sound a little different, but it is hinting to the same thing. So you can, as a reader, conclude that this is an important theme of the text. Now, as a reader, initially, you must write down the concept on a piece of paper and start connecting them with lines to author's verbatim expression. Exactly the same expression that the author has used. You try and connect that same concept to that expression, whether the concept is representing what the author is stating. And if you find the same concept occurring in a text again and again, you are then confirmed that this is a theme. Now, there is no frequency number, or one cannot say how many repetitions are required to suggest a theme. But that is an open question, and only you as a reader, you can decide that. Now, another way to find theme is looking for new terms. Terms that are unfamiliar. Either they are unfamiliar terms or they are being used in unfamiliar ways. So there could be an abundance of analogies and metaphors. People represent their thought, feeling, and behavior by adopting analogies and metaphors. And every language every author will use some metaphor. For example, if there was a text, I'm just giving you in verbatim an example. Supposing there is a text which is describing American marriage. And marriage can have several themes. And if the author happens to express her surprise at the high rate of divorce, and although in the introductory paragraph, the author might say that a couple's marriage is as good as the Rock of Gibraltar. Now that is a phrase, Rock of Gibraltar, which means it is steady, stable, and solid. I mean, the couple is well related, they are in harmony, and there is no dispute. Or you may even use another phrase to describe that as nailed in cement. So by using metaphors, you indicate very strong, stable, lastingness of marriage. Or additionally, as you advance further, maybe in that passage, you may get a description of the marriage, and there could be sub-themes. A sub-theme of sharedness, compatibility, togetherness, and so on and so forth. So maybe today's class may not be sufficient for deliberating more on theme. I'm just sharing a few points which I consider to be important. So I'll request that we start with the passage, and can okay. I don't know. Okay. So this is okay. Session 3, passage 7. Can you see that passage?
Yes, sir.
Okay,
Yes.
thank you. Okay, whatever I have discussed, do you find those elements in the first sentence itself? If anyone finds it in the topic sentence, please unmute and respond to my question.
Yes, we have time given, first thing, and geographical
You have
location.
2 years and you have got a geographical location,
Yes.
and this is called setting. Now, where is it? And what is the topic? What hint do you get? That there are a lot of Chinese immigrants in Upper Egypt and they are selling lingeries. Now, this is quite startling. And you get a hint. There is something very different about the Chinese in Egypt selling lingeries. And this is the author who is writing this. He's been tracking it. He notices a lot of Chinese in Upper Egypt, and they are selling this merchandise of lingeries. These are women's undergarments. Now, that's not a very serious topic. It's trivial. So, it becomes very apparent that there is something very serious behind this innocent statement. So, you need to be on guard. The passage is not going to be about lingeries, definitely. So, you learn about the style of the author. He's in the habit of making an understatement. That is one form of wit. So next connecting idea is in a deeply conservative region, of course, Egypt being a Muslim country, where women would not even hang out there to dry their lingeries outside on a line. How is it possible that in such a conservative region, especially when you know that Egyptian families do not allow women to work or own businesses, and yet you find the Chinese doing a fantastic business here? And that's because of their status as outsiders. Now, how do they behave, these Chinese in Egypt? They don't gossip. They don't tell about their women customers. And whatever is their opinion, they don't share it with the local population. And so there is a New Yorker article which says, learning to speak lingerie. And what is so funny is that when the Chinese use Arabic, So how you pronounce, how you use the language, both the Chinese, which is called Mandarin, or the Arabic, the essential phonetic differences, that Arabic language is depends which gender is speaking. So gender impacts the phonetics and the language. Now these Chinese sellers, they have picked up the nuances of the language only through conversations. And they have picked up the speech patterns from their female customers. And he says the last sentence of the paragraph describes the entire thing. It's a conclusion. So you've got the theme. The theme is lingerie dialect. And you can see how it is being reconnected. Learning to speak lingerie. So selling lingerie to a New York article saying is learning to speak lingerie. And then in the last line of the paragraph is how the author is trying to sum up the lingerie dialect. And what is so disarming is that the Chinese men, have learned the speech pattern from the female Arabs. And when they speak and adopt that pattern, it's a very funny, but it's quite a disarming, smiling experience. People are going to have fun. So when the Bengalis speak Hindi, they often confuse between the gender. If a man suppose saying, "Main aa raha hu," a Bengali is likely to say, "Main aati." So now you get introduced to theme, and you have learned how the central idea is being reconnected twice through use of metaphors. Is that clear? Does anybody have a question about this? Is it clear to you? Please unmute. Can anybody respond?
No questions, sir.
Is it clear?
Yes.
Okay. How about other participants?
Clear, sir.
It's clear. Now you're looking at the passage in a kind of, you're making a dissection. You're learning the technique. Of course, you will not be able to comprehend everything in this class itself, but it requires diligent practice at your end. So I've introduced you to some techniques. And now I'm giving you a display. So what is the unique thing that you have learned? That Chinese men have adopted the Arabic female speech pattern because they have learned Arabic through conversations in the course of selling their lingeries to women clients. So it says basically there is a scientific observation being made that you learn, you can pick up language through conversation, and it is important with whom you are conversing. So there is a definite impact of gender on language, on linguistics. The pattern of your pronunciation, your enunciation. You're going to learn that. So that is the main idea of the first paragraph. So we move to the next paragraph. And can I have all of you to read this second paragraph and tell me what are the themes that you have identified and why? I'm going to ask each one of you. So I give you, say, 2 minutes to read this paragraph, make some note, and then tell me what, according to you, could be the theme here. Okay, time's up. Any volunteer? Anyone volunteering to, because everybody has to respond. Everybody has to identify the theme. So push your adrenaline and start answering this.
Okay, so what I identify in this paragraph is, so basically the author is speaking about a magazine in which he have written a few articles regarding an article regarding the business which was going in the Middle East. So what he found out was people are not so interested, or what do you call, they are not able to understand the Egyptian linguistic. uh, that is what they are stopping from reading the articles, is what I understand.
See, good attempt, but not yet good enough to make the grade. See, the first paragraph, we have already concluded that there is a lingerie dialect. So this paragraph is a connecting paragraph, so it will be elaborating it further in order to bring the conflict, the plot. So now there is another episode which is being mentioned here. He says, when I write about the Chinese in the New Yorker, the readers kind of appreciate the unusual perspective that I bring. What is the unusual perspective? When Chinese men are speaking in feminine voice, which basically the main argument is that linguistics is pronunciation, enunciation is definitely affected by gender. And that is an unusual perspective. Something which you are not aware of normally in your normal conversation. So he's now going to elaborate. And he has given the first sentence. When I wrote about the Chinese in the New Yorker, most readers appreciated it because it brought out a very unusual idea. But he says, he complains that whatever is pertaining to Middle East, some people only look at what the words. They do not, that is the black and white quality of a byline. Then don't look beyond those lines. They just look at the printed matter. And in order to establish the credibility of his argument, that some people have trouble in understanding how the Chinese men are speaking in a feminine voice, and therefore quotes a reporter called Aisha Ghani, who says, this is so Orientalist. And she's at a loss. I don't know what to do. And she's no less a mortal. She's a reporter with The Guardian. So her comment is quite, as a critique, her comment is important. And she has said this in a tweet. And similarly, in another paper, British paper, another reporter writes, I wouldn't have minded an article on the subject written by an Egyptian woman. Probably would have had better insight. Again, you see gender bias, or you look at how even your written words can have, or people perceive that there is some subtle gender impact on what you write and how you present your ideas. So this is an elaboration of the argument done in the first. There is nothing new. It is only adding evidence. Is that clear? I don't get response here. Okay.
Yes, sir.
So now we move to the third paragraph. And now you know. So what you say is, people have their biases. One, the fact is gender impacts. And even men can learn the feminine pattern if they are conversing only with women, like the Chinese men. And since they keep themselves aloof from the men folks, the Arab men, that they don't know, or they're not picking up the cues how the conversations are different. And that only establishes the fact that your language, your style of speech is determined by which genders you interact with. You know, there's a very humorous way that a couple, a husband and wife, they start looking like brother and sister after 30 years or 20 years of marriage. They start affecting each other. So I now request all of you to read the third paragraph, and I'm going to ask somebody else this time. You have exactly 2 minutes for this. Okay, time is up. So who can volunteer now among Mandeep, Prerit, Anshula? Yeah.
So, sir, in this paragraph, he actually draws a conclusion from the previous paragraph. Like he wanted to reply that I am not the kind of man like who would not take this issue seriously, because since he wrote about the Middle East and not an Middle Eastern woman. So,
Mhm.
considering this, he just wanted to give an explanation that why did he wrote an article about the same.
Mhm.
Also he writes that he was like not he was since Chinese was also the outsiders in Egypt.
Mhm.
Therefore, he was also an outsider to them. So Chinese were more what we say more drawn towards him to make him understand the culture.
Okay. See, again, you're missing. See, there is an English phrase which says, you look at the forest and you miss the tree. Or you look at the tree and you miss the forest. Prerit made a valiant attempt, but it has failed. Because the entire paragraph is again only an elaboration of an argument, a new argument. And the key words here are empathy and understanding. Because when you try to learn a different language, and of course, no language is peculiar to a particular gender or race. Anybody can learn any language. But anybody who tries to learn a language gradually becomes very sympathetic to others because he gets to know the different experiences of the world. For example, if you are reading a religious text from India of the Hindus, you will often come across a Sanskrit word called kirtan or bhajan. No, there are no equivalent words there because that is culturally determined. So the church does not have kirtan or bhajan, it has a choir. They also sing, but that is a different cultural expression. As compared to a Hindu temple, they are doing it in a very different way. So when you try and understand the language of somebody else, it is very difficult, very challenging. And in that process, you develop empathy and understanding. Now, if I think that empathy and understanding are two key words here or themes, I also see that this is again being repeated in the second line, where it says, who wrestles with a difficult language can learn to be more sympathetic to outsiders. Again, the same point. And a further elaboration of how you develop sympathy is through learning process, because you get embarrassed for using the feminine for the um, I mean for the word which is peculiar to females, and if a man is using it, it becomes an embarrassment, or vice versa. So you're going to get frustrated at times, you're going to get embarrassed at times, and only gradually and slowly you will develop your understanding and connection with the language. And this process, he calls it as transformative. Again, the word is indicating a very deep process of learning, which has to do with the emotional quality of empathy and understanding. And then by talking in these abstract terms, suddenly the author moves and gives a very concrete expression. In Upper Egypt, the Chinese experience of struggling to learn Arabic and local culture had made them much more thoughtful. So when you learn a foreign language, you develop empathy, understanding, and you also become thoughtful. All these three things are very transformative. It changes you. Now he is talking about his own cultural experience. He says, in the same way, I was interested in their lives, not because of some kind of voyeurism, some kind of a pervert pleasure. How is it that men are selling lingeries to female customers in a conservative society? That was not the reason. It was not a voyeuristic interest. It was not because of carnal desire. It had no sexual connotation. But he says that I have experienced Egypt and Arab world as an outsider. Now this author seems to be a writer, an author, maybe a reporter with some media house. So he is not confined in his conversation with only females. He is talking and intermingling with Arabs, both men and women. And what he says is, because I speak Arabic, I'm a white man speaking Arabic in Egypt, and I am welcomed by both the Chinese and the Egyptians, because I become more acceptable to them. So what happens is that your identity, you are a North Indian, you are a South Indian, you are a Marathi and you are a non-Marathi. We have all these regional identities. And we cling to our identity. We make friendship based on identity. Who am I? Where am I born? What is my life experience? And generally this stereotyping of the other prevents you to enjoy good friendship with people from different backgrounds. But what is happening here is, because this man can speak their language, the Egyptian language. The Egyptians love to interact with him. The Chinese see him as a foreigner like themselves. So they have a sense of affinity, closeness. Okay, you are also an outsider and we are also an outsider. So somewhere this identity of an Egyptian speaking person overcomes other identities of race or racial prejudice, and language starts cementing the bonds of friendship. So similarly, here, empathy, understanding, transformation, thoughtful, all this, plus the identity, all this or these divisive or dividing lines get blurred, they are dropped because of your ability to communicate in their native language. So he takes to that criticism. You have read in the previous paragraph, some reporter from The Guardian saying it's all Orientalist stuff. So he takes a sweep, he takes he makes a barbed criticism. He uses the word Orientalist as a kind of a retort. क्योंकि पहले हमने देखा कि वो गार्डियन का रिपोर्टर ही is trying to say that this is all Orientalist and I can't get a hang of it. And therefore he uses the word lobbed. People throw around this word, the non-Orientalist or the white civilization. They misuse this word. They call it Orientalist as if, and this Orientalist is a stereotype term. It does not capture what is going behind that interaction. It does not capture empathy. It does not capture understanding. It does not capture thoughtfulness. It does not capture how gender is affecting. It does not capture how the single act of communicating in a native language can drop all the divisions. So that complexity is not being captured if you use stereotypical lenses to look at a phenomenon. So then he comes to define it. He says, what is the dynamic when a man from Missouri observes a Zhejiang native selling lingerie to an upper Egyptian woman? So how are they interacting? So what he's saying is, I am from Missouri, my city. I observe a Chinese trying to sell lingerie to an Egyptian woman. And since there is no division, so he asks a very pointed question. He says, if all of us now stand beside the river, the same river, that means we are using the same language, and that we understand what this language means, we are able to understand, then who is bothered whether you are white or you are yellow or you are brown? So he says that to describe this just as Oriental is a kind of doing injustice to the complex phenomena. So here again you find that the word Orientalist is being used twice. One in the first sentence of this paragraph and ultimately as the last. And they are trying to reinforce each other that please don't stereotype. Now comes the real brainy stuff. So the last paragraph is naturally a conclusion of the entire previous chain of arguments, and it is a final culmination. So he says, okay, you are preoccupied with identity politics. You call some people Orientalists, some people as Western. Fine. So you are busy with your identity politics. But are you really concerned about a phenomena called identity linguistics? You are what you speak. So the words that you use is the word that you are thinking in. It defines your self, your personality, your thought process. And whatever you speak is also affected by your race, ethnicity, and even your gender. And therefore, sometimes identity linguistics can be healthy. Now, we are not born with all these qualities. We learn the speech pattern. If I were to have picked you up from your present state and nurtured you here, say in Bengal, you would have fluently learned Bengali. And probably you'll find it, I would have found speaking Telugu difficult. So what he's saying is, yes, identity politics is not the same as identity linguistics. Whatever be your speech pattern, the words, the vocabulary, the sentences, it reflects who you are as a person. And this also affects who you are is also affected by ethnicity, your race, or your gender. And maybe sometimes it is healthy and sometimes it is unhealthy. But sometimes it is healthy to consider human characteristics that are not inborn. Linguistics is not inborn, it is learned. So what is he trying to argue finally? He's probably saying that we need to learn different languages because that will make us empathetic, understanding, thoughtful, and it will be a wonderful transformation. It can overcome identity barrier, it can overcome gender barrier and other barriers. So if you look at, let's go and look at this question 1. Now you don't have to look at the solution, okay? But looking at the question, it says, and you have to be careful, which of the following is not responsible for language's ability to change us? So can I get somebody to answer this?
So can you scroll down a bit?
Yeah, but if I scroll a bit, you look at the answer.
Oh, okay. I mean, these are the only options. Okay, fine.
Yeah, these are the options, A, B, C, and D.
Okay.
Why is the answer given as C? See, the question is slightly twisted. It says, which of the following is not responsible for language's ability to changes? We have understood that language can changes. In how it changes, what is its impact? They have already learned all this. So what do you find? So there are certain characteristics of language which is going to be given, or which is given here. And you are being probed that which among the following is not responsible for this. Of course, learning is never a smooth process. There are ups and downs. So this is a true statement. So this cannot be the answer to this question. Again, language's ability to mediate the impact of identity markers one is born with. Of course, it says that you are what you speak. So when English is spoken by the Americans, and when the same English is being spoken by the British, because of cultural differences, because of linguistic differences, their identities are separate, apart, although they are speaking the same language. So people who reside in Telangana and people who are residing in a faraway corner of Andhra Pradesh, at one point they were sharing the same state, but they were distinct linguistic markers. You could identify whether this man is from this particular region or from that particular region. So based on this, you do agree that language has this ability that it can bring down your identity because of the very act of communication, because your learning makes you thoughtful, transformative. So all these identity politics that divides people, when people learn each other's language and they communicate, if I learn your language and I communicate in that language with you, I have reduced the barrier to a certain extent. And it says that yes, this impact of this language and your identity, they kind of interact and they make you empathetic and thoughtful. You're more compassionate, you're more considerate. So this answer B is something which is not in consonance with the question. It is supporting. And then it says that twists and turns in the evolution of language over time. Now, we have never talked about this at all. The entire passage that you have talked about is that stuff that you sell can also become a linguistic. You had titles, you had metaphors, all illustrating the painful process of learning and how people get cues, how they develop an understanding, and that understanding makes them wiser. They become more connected with the other person, and understanding grows. So there was no question of evolution of language that is being discussed here. So this is not being discussed. So I can fairly say that this is not responsible for language's ability to changes. So this is probably the right answer. Okay, but then this is only the third option. I need to explore the fourth option. So the fourth option says language's intrinsic connection to our notions of self and identity. Again, it is reinforcing the point that has been made. That somewhere, somehow, when you speak somebody else's language, it affects your identity and your notion of self. So it supports, and this is a truth statement. Is that clear to you? Hello?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, Anshula. How clear is this class to you? See, a basic problem in online classes that your mind, I am only speaking at the rate of say 150 words per minute, whereas the mind has the capacity to gobble up 500 words per minute. So in the idle time, what happens is your mind starts wandering, and then you don't feel connected or you don't feel engaged. Now, had it been a physical setting, then I would have explained and underlined things. I can underline it, but that will not, I mean,
Yes,
I
sir.
don't know. So anyways, yes, how do you kind of, how is your understanding that the way I've explained, what is your feedback?
Sir, I got the paragraph very well, what exactly it is saying,
Yeah.
and various key points that you shared for a journal passage.
Yeah. So how, what kind of a narrative, is it a narrative or is it an expository text?
That part I didn't get. Really sorry.
Okay. For you guys, you have been reading expository text in your books of computer science. They are simple, concise, to the point.
Yes.
What you have read is a narrative text. Okay. And if you read, if you listen to the audio, you'll get a better hang. Okay.
Okay, sir. Okay, sir.
So what is your feedback today? How much do you give me?
I will give 4 out of 5.
Okay. Thank you.
Yes.
Yes. Mandeep,
Yes, sir.
what is your feedback?
I would also rate 4 out of 5, sir. It's interesting, by the way.
Did it expand your knowledge?
Yes, I did expand my knowledge on reading.
And was it a very unique class?
Yes, of
Did
course it was.
did you get to learn a lot of things that has not, I'm sure nobody teaches this actually. If you have access to others and if you compare, you'll not find this stuff being discussed at all. Okay. And who else in the line? Prerit?
Yes, sir. I'll also rate sir 4, sir.
Well, did you feel engaged?
Pardon?
Did you feel engaged? Was it
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
interactive enough for you to understand?
Yes, sir. I think I need to work on to understand the passage a bit more. As
Yeah.
when I answered that question, I thought that I was just close, but I was not totally got the
Yes.
hang of the passage.
Okay. Okay. But is it now clearer to you as to how you should do your work?
Yes, sir. After what you to explain
See,
how we should approach, it's clear now.
I mean, if I don't know what is, I'll just say that if you are able to draw a rectangle, okay, I don't know. I mean, how do you, so if you were to draw a rectangle, okay, and within the rectangle you draw the circle, I have described the passage organizer. You should be doing this. And on each corner of the rectangle, you are going to write agree with what points that you agree with in the passage. The next vertex of the rectangle, you can say what points you disagree. The third point could be something where you had suddenly a flash, suddenly a new insight that is coming to you, and you can write that a word is there for this. This is called epiphany. EPIPHANY. You can look up the meaning in the dictionary. That is called a aha moment. It's a thrill that you get when you learn something new. So while reading this passage, for example, I got a thrill. I was reading it for the first time with you, and I got a thrill, and it explained to me how language is also affected, our speech pattern is affected, not by our gender alone, but with whom we interact. And that's a very wonderful insight. So if a woman was conversing with most men around, her speech pattern will reflect a bit of that impact, the male gender impact. She is going to imitate. So all of us are copycats. We learn, I mean, wherever we are born in that particular culture, we learn the language by mimicry, by imitation. And that is the point that he's making. And he's saying that the act of learning a different language is a very powerfully transformative experience. So I think Prerit is there. So can I have Aswik's feedback on this lesson today?
Sir, for one thing, what I learned today, I mean, was I didn't know that we can actually break down paragraphs into those many parts and then understand what the paragraph is. So
Yeah.
I actually wrote down everything like what should be identified and etc.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it was a pretty good, sir, because I got to know how to quickly answer the questions because I have points written before I attempt the questions, so that will be easy for me. And I
Yeah,
actually
think,
learned how what points to write, like not you shouldn't write everything, but what important points you should write that will
yes.
help you in
And
answering.
how do you judge that? I told you that words which are getting repeated often.
Yes, yes, that gives me about the theme,
Yes,
and
yes. It
then
gives you and then how you connect ideas, how you are elaborating the argument. Yeah, opening sub goals. I told you, no?
yes,
So there is something called goals and sub goals. So you get to know the goal, and then you later on in successive paragraphs you get to know the sub goals. So each particular paragraph has a sub goal. A sub goal is basically an event and a state, a situation. Okay.
yes,
So
sir.
one event was the Chinese speaking with female customers, and the goal was that they needed to understand, and in trying to understand the women, the Chinese men were learning how females speak Arabic, right? Yeah, good.
Uh,
Aswik.
yes, sir. Sir, 1 minute, I'll share my screen, and actually I draw that rectangle and circle ka thing, so maybe you can
So nice of you. Please, I am finding it difficult. You've done my job. Okay.
give me. You're able to see my screen.
Yes.
So is
Yes.
this what you're mentioning about?
Yes. 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 Exactly. Wonderful. So now here, as it is clearly illustrated in this picture, there are 4 vertex points here, and Ashwik has written disagree, points with which you disagree as a reader, and points with which you agree, and the epiphany moments, that is points which give you a sudden insight. So for me, my sudden insight came when it said that empathy and understanding comes because you're trying to struggle with a foreign language. And that humbles you, sometimes frustrates you, embarrasses you, because you are often likely to make mistakes. And therefore, that makes you empathetic, compassionate, and very thoughtful. I never knew that this part, that language can also make somebody so transformed. So that was an epiphany moment for me, aha moment. And any miscellaneous point that you might have noticed in the or in the passage. And as I said, every story, every passage is a story. And every story has to have a setting. A setting is a place, a location, a type. And then I said, beside that, you're going to have plot, a series of events. So we start there from the personal observation of this writer. And then in the next paragraph, we get opinions flaunted or thrown by people working in a foreign media, Western media, who look at them and describe them in a stereotypical language word called Orientalist. And then he says, if we are speaking the same language, we are standing at the same river, then how can you say which way is the east and which way is the west? Well, you try and understand this. If I say that the sun has set, I am not correct 100%. But at the same time, the sun has risen somewhere. It has risen in Japan. It has risen in America. Today is a new day for them. So because of the locational difference, we have a different perspective. So therefore he writes, when we stand at the same river. That is the meaning. We share the same geographical spot because we are speaking the same language. So how can you say you are going east or I am going west? You say this only because you are at a different point of time. Your location is different. You are not sensitive. You have not gone through that trauma of learning a foreign language. And therefore, this is a stereotype. So you can observe all that and put it there. I hope this is something which Ashwik can share with his friends, and with the help of the audio recorded, I think you will get a better hang. This is called passage organizer. And you need to do this exercise. You know, it's a compulsory exercise that you need to do. Initially, at least for the next 4 weeks. So it will give you immense speed and comprehension, and you're not likely to make mistakes. I mean, it will be like a quant experience altogether. So listen to that initial first half an hour, 45 minutes of lecture that I've given. Well, I'm covering a lot of details which can make you a very competent RC reader, and you can even get 100% time. So if anybody has a question, please shoot. Otherwise, we will scoot. Nobody has a question for me? Okay. So what do I do? Thank you very much. Ashwik,
Yes, sir.
thank you very much. You've drawn the figure for me. It's beautiful. And please share with that with your friends.
Sure.
And
sure.
I hope listen to the lecture, the first 45 minutes, and later the explanations that I've given. And I hope that will add a lot of value to your preparation. Okay. And Ashwik, I never asked your feedback. How much are you giving me?
Sir, today's class I can give you a 5 because I got a lot of intake and I was expecting this.
Okay. Thank you. I will be taking up more similar classes because this is how you do the craft. You learn the craft of dissecting the anatomy of a passage. Okay. So my focus will be to make you to learn this skill. I am definitely going to juxtapose or bring some more additional topics that I consider important in the act of comprehending a passage indirectly. Okay. Something which will help you indirectly. If you want, I can take that, otherwise I will avoid it. So with that, thank you very much. Okay.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Thank
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
you.